So here's the thing, my sales journey didn't actually start with SMMA. It started knocking doors and talking to strangers on the street. And I was actually selling probably the toughest product ever to sell, religion. And at first, it was really bad. And I don't love comparing sales to missionary work, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of similarities. And all that door-to-door experience made sales really easy for me when I started my agency. So on average, my closing ratio in my agency was between 40 and 50%, meaning that for every 2 calls we got on, we closed 1. So I'm gonna spill all the secrets today so you guys can do the same. The first key thing you need to understand is that you sell people, not products. Sales is not about being sleazy. It's not about selling people stuff they don't need. It's about actually helping people. In fact, the Latin root of the word sell means to give. It means to help. And that's the approach that we should be taking. The second thing you have to realize is that at the end of the day, sales is a function of one thing, and that is trust. If the person on the other end of the screen does not trust you, they're not going to buy from you. So once you understand those 2 things, the first thing you need to do is actually set the appointment. Now, there's a million different ways to set appointments, but not all are created equal. Most of you are probably accustomed to doing outbound prospecting and reaching out to people and asking them to get on calls with you. However, what I teach my students is to get people to come to them, because going back to the trust thing we talked about earlier, if someone's coming to you, you have authority over them. But since everyone has to go through the outbound prospecting phase at the beginning of their agency, we'll talk about how to get people to show at that stage. The first thing you need to understand is that if you're pitching something people don't actually want, you're never going to get responses. And the way that you figure out what people want is by doing research. So before I ever started pitching orthodontists on running Facebook ads, I started to ask them about their problems first, understand their language, and then I knew how to talk to them on sales calls. And when I did outreach, I could relate to them much better. So that's step 1. Once you understand what they want, you literally just state it as clearly and concisely as you can in a message to them. Hey, I can help you get blank. Are you interested? Worth a chat, whatever it is. And if you want to spice it up a little bit, you can add a without at the end. So you'd say, hey, I can help you get 30 new customer opportunities without paid ads in the next 30 days. Worth a chat. Now, really, please take this and do not, for the love of all things, overcomplicate your outreach script. If you're going to type 15 paragraphs to every person you reach out to, you're probably not going to close a client. Another approach that I liked to take was a little bit more of a soft sell strategy, where I would reach out and I would ask the person what their biggest marketing headache was. And then, and this is a key to get them to showing up and closing, I would send them a valuable resource before we even ever got on a call. I would say, hey, okay, you're saying your biggest issue is tracking ROI. I actually made a video on how to track marketing ROI for orthodontists. Here it is. Check it out. And then I would let them go off, watch the video. And if they never got back to me, I might follow up and see if they had seen it. But most of the time, what ended up happening is that they watched the video, they saw, wow, this person really knows what they're talking about. Proof on the screen here that this works. Video is powerful, guys, and providing value before you ever get on a call will make the calls much, much easier to close. So if you don't have a video yet describing what you do and why it's valuable, go make it so that you can use it in your outreach. Now, in addition to the video, a few other pointers when it comes to actually scheduling the appointment. If you're doing outreach to people and they're saying, yeah, I'm open to getting on a call, and then you send them a calendar link, they're probably not going to book on that because it's not easy for them. You're not making it easy. You need to make it as easy as possible for them to schedule with you. So you'll say free tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern, or you could even go to their profile. You could look at what time zone they're in, and then you could provide that time zone to them to make it even easier for them. And then lastly, I would say you need to sell the sales call itself. Now, your video should do that, but if for some reason they haven't watched the video, the people that you're getting on calls with need to understand why it's worth their time. Their time is the most valuable thing in the world, and they can tell if you're going to respect that or not. You need to understand that a lot of the people you're pitching, A, get a lot of pitches every day anyway, and B, it's just not that important to them. Yeah, they might be interested in learning about what you're doing, but unless they're in severe pain and they know you're the person that can solve that for them, they're probably not that incentivized to show. So you really need to be thinking about how you can communicate the value of the sales call itself, independent of anything else. Say, look, I'd love to get on a call with you. I promise I'm not going to try to sell you anything you don't need. However, based on the problems you've told me about in your business, maybe you had a quick call with them before or a quick chat over DM, I really think I could help you and I'd love to just discuss it. What do you think? Notice how I'm framing it in terms of what they want, understanding their world instead of trying to, inflate my own numbers or talk about how awesome I am. Again, remember, we sell the person, not the product. All right, so now let's discuss the call. You've actually gotten the person to show up. Hopefully they're pretty interested because they've watched your video. Maybe they're not. Either way, this is how I like to approach the beginning of the call. First of all, a little bit of chit chat, a little bit of small talk. Hey, where are you from? What's the weather like? Oh, cool. Just a little bit of back and forth. You might notice that the person isn't really into this. If you read that, just move on. You don't have to talk to them for a long time. Once you've had a little bit of chit chat with them, the next thing is to set the tone and do what's called a temp check. This is where we see how serious this person is. This is where the authority of the call is established. If you come out strong and establish yourself as an authority, someone who knows what they're doing and is serious about using their time wisely and not wasting the other person's time, they will tend to match that energy. But if they come over and they're bulldozing you, you're not going to be able to sell much because they're the ones in control. Now, again, this depends on if they reached out to you or if you reached out to them. Let's cover each scenario. So if this person reached out to me, I'm automatically an authority. I don't really have to spend too much time trying to establish myself. But I'd probably say something like, well, I really appreciate you scheduling this call. Based on your answers in the questionnaire, I think we can help you, but I want to make sure that I really get a clear picture of what your situation is. So why don't we dive into that for a little bit? And then if it seems like I can help you, we'll discuss how our program works. How does that sound? If I reached out to them, again, I'm automatically in a lower authority point. Let's say they haven't watched a video, they just agreed to the call and they showed up to the call. What I would say is something like this. Hey, Julie, I really appreciate you taking the call. I know you probably get a lot of requests like this, and I know your time is very valuable, so I want to respect that. We do have a program that's very robust and I believe can help any med spa in your situation. So I'd love to share that with you, but first I wanted to ask, do you have any specific questions, or is there anything you're struggling with, particularly when it comes to marketing? You'll notice the subtle difference here. I'm acknowledging when I've reached out to somebody that I don't have as much authority, and I'm saying, look, I want to share this with you. I just want to make sure you don't have any questions before we dive into it. Again, if you've reached out to somebody, you can't really afford to spend 5 to 10 minutes asking them a bunch of questions about their business because they're going to be wondering, like, who does this person think they are? Instead, you should ask them if they have any questions, and then you should go into the pitch as soon as possible. So once we've gone through that initial phase, you can certainly still ask a person that you reached out to, whether you can ask them a few questions about their business before you get started, but just be aware that that clock is ticking much faster than if they reached out to you or if they've already watched a video or some sort of value from you where they're interested in what you have. So if you do end up going into the questions part of the sales call, this is what I like to say. I know you probably have a lot of things going on and you're quite busy. What motivated you to take your time out of the day to take this call? Or something as simple as, so tell me why you scheduled this call with me today. Or what I do when I'm in a very high authority frame and I know someone knows a lot about what I'm selling already, I just say something like, yeah, so how can I help you? Just let the person talk. That's the key. It's actually very efficient just to get the ball in their court and have them start talking because you'll learn a lot more. So if you do end up going down the questions route, you're probably going to get one of 4 potential answers. The first one will be just kind of like a clueless, like, well, you reached out to me, so I just, decided to get on the phone. Now, this is kind of an awkward position to be in and why I don't always recommend asking the, why did you decide to get on this call question. If you do get this answer where they're like, you just reached out to me, and I thought I might, give it a chance, you have a couple options. You could say something like, well, are you looking to grow your business? Is that something that's on your goal list right now? And just see how they respond to that. If they're not, then you're like, well, no worries. Like, we don't have to do the call. It's totally up to you. And call their bluff a little bit because it's not just because you reached out that they're on the call. They do have a reason for being there, unless they don't, in which case you probably don't want to be on the call anyway. The other option would be to just kind of jump into the pitch and be like, cool, I'd love to just give you the pitch, see what you think of it, and then we can discuss from there, how does that sound? Both of these can be solid approaches depending on who the person is, depending what's happening. You really have to educate your EQ when it comes to sales and just understanding what this person's really saying. But don't be afraid to back up, try to reframe the authority a little bit and get them to admit that they're on the call because they want to grow their business. However, the direct pitch method could also be very effective because you just get all the info out there, and if they're interested in it, they're going to say yes. And if they're not, they're going to say no. And if they have objections, you can actually start handling them quite soon instead of waiting until they don't have time anymore to go through those objections. The next type of response you'll likely get is either a guarded or a half-guarded type answer. So after you ask, tell me what motivated you to get on this call today, they might say something like, yeah, I was just wondering how much what you do costs. Or I'm interviewing marketing agencies to see which one is the best fit for my company. Something that cuts through your pitch, undermines your authority. These people are typically like trying to be on top because they feel uncomfortable in a sales situation where they're not the authority. And again, you kind of have 2 options here. You can just go ahead with what they're saying. If they say, how much does what you do cost? You could literally just say, well, it depends exactly what you want, but it's around $2,000. And if they say, I'm interviewing marketing agencies and trying to find the best one for me, you could say, cool, I think we probably are the right one for you. So I'd love to, prove that to you. Usually if people are asking questions like that, or they're that forward or that kind of undermining of your authority, they're not really worth having a long sales call with anyway. So I'd like to just answer their question and move on with it. And you don't have to deal with them as a client, which is another big thing that not a lot of people think about. Having the right types of clients that aren't really high maintenance is huge. And so if you notice on a sales call that someone's really, really finicky, picky, rude, narcissistic, whatever it is, like, you probably don't want to do business with them anyway. So why are you continuing to have a sales call with them? And the other options in this case is kind of back up a little bit and just, again, reframe the authority. So if they ask, how much does what you do cost? I could say something like, well, I'm not even sure if I can help you yet. So maybe we should talk about that first and just ensure it's a good fit. What do you think? Or if they say, I'm interviewing marketing companies, you could say something like, got it. So what are you looking for in a marketing company? Again, it really depends who you're talking with and with what tone and what intention they're asking questions. You really need to pay attention to these kind of subconscious games that are at play between you and the prospect. The third response you might get is something very honest. So they might say something like, yeah, I'm just interested in learning more about what you do. Or in a very probably rare case, they would say something like, well, our marketing just isn't working as well as we want it to, and we want to find someone who can help us. And in those cases, I just go along exactly with what they said. So if they said, I just want to learn more about what you do, you just say, great, cool. Do you mind if I just go into the pitch now? And if you have any questions, you can ask them as we go along. And if they say something like, my business isn't where I want it to be, I would respond with, Kevin, I'm so glad you shared that with me. Tell me how I can help. What's going on? And then the last option that will probably come through is some sort of life story. You'll ask, so tell me why you got on this call with me today. And then they'll say, well, back in 1992, this happened and this happened. And the correct option there is just to listen. If you're pressed for time, you can say, hey, I don't want to cut you off. I really apologize. I do have another call in, 10, 20 minutes, whatever the number is. I just want to make sure we have time to discuss what we came on the call for today. But it's actually quite efficient to have somebody else just tell you their entire story without you asking all the questions. So if they like to talk, I usually just let them talk and then try to guide them back to the point if they get really sidetracked. So then a question that a lot of beginners have is like, what types of questions should I really be asking on these calls? I don't get it. Or they're following a script and it's so cringy because they're asking questions to people that do not need to be asked these questions. Like,
how would it affect you if your business continued at the current rate? How would you feel about that? And how would it affect your family?
Like, nobody needs to have those questions asked to them, especially if you were the person that reached out to them. So these are the types of questions that I like to ask. Number one, look, if we were sitting together, a year from now, 6 months from now in a coffee shop, and you had achieved everything you wanted to achieve, what would it be? And just let them talk. It's open-ended and it helps them think into the future about what they really want. Other options, depending on your niche, would say something like, so how many more new customers can you handle right now? This makes sure that they're actually looking into marketing for the right reasons. And they may or may not know the answer to that, but it's a really, really good question because it helps you realize how viable the marketing is for them anyway, and gives you an insight into the mindset of the business owner. Another similar question along with that one is, how fast do you want to scale this? You can also ask, if it's a new niche, how much revenue do you get per customer? How much profit do you typically get? And then lastly, how are you currently getting customers? These are all good questions. Just ask some basic things about the business and help them say in their own words what the gap is between where they are and where they want to go. Now, it's very important in this section that you pay attention to what they're saying. You actually listen and you actually care. You ask clarifying questions if you're not completely sure. So if they say,
well, I'm bringing on maybe 30 new customers a month right now, and I'd like to be bringing on like 40.
Okay, 40. Now, could your current team handle an extra 10 customers per month, or would you need to hire more staff if we were able to do that for you?
Oh, well, I think they could probably handle it. We might need to bring on one more person.
Okay, so you're happy where you're at. You just want to make sure you're maximizing the current team, right?
Yeah, that's where I'm at. Cool.
The person should feel like you really care and you're actually listening to them. Then once you've gone through all the questions you want to ask, you have a good understanding of their situation, then you're going to move on to the pitch. And the transition to the pitch could go something like this. Cool, well, based on what you've said, we can definitely help you. In fact, people in your situation is like most of the customers that we actually help. Or if you don't have any customers yet, you can leave that part out. Do you mind if I go ahead and show you our program now and how it would apply to you? Another option here would be to recap what they said. Say something like, okay, so the notes here I've got, just correct me if I didn't get anything down right. You're at 30 customers a month right now. You'd like to get to 40. You think what's keeping you back is probably just a lack of consistency on social media, or not even using social media ads at all. But you're pretty confident if we spent around, $1,500 $1,500 to $2,000 a month on ads, that you would get those extra 10 customers. Is that right? And then you wait for them to respond. So then we're in the pitch. This is the moment of truth. This is where we're really showing the person what's going on. And the key here is that you've asked some good questions so that you can relate the generic pitch that you have back to them. Now, it's not totally necessary to have visual aids, but it really depends on your niche. If you're getting on a Zoom call, you must have visual aids. If you're not getting on a Zoom call, then obviously you won't have visual aids. But you just need to explain things as simply as possible. This is the general flow that I like to follow. First of all, we talk about the problem that we noticed in the marketplace. Then we talk about some truths that people are ignoring that fix those problems. And then we talk about our framework and how it fixes that. So an example of the truth section, we'd say something like, look, what we realized is a lot of people in your industry, they're doing 3 things wrong. First of all, they're relying on word of mouth too much. Now, it's very positive. It's amazing when word of mouth works. However, if you want to grow your business, at some point that just sort of exhausts itself. Secondly, a lot of people are seeing marketing as a magic pill. So they just think they hire a marketing agency and boom, their business is going to grow. Lastly, they're seeing leads just like they see referrals. They think that if they generate 10 leads, they're going to get 10 sales. None of these things are actually true. So I want to share a little bit of a mindset shift with you first, and then I'll share the program, because that's really how we solve the problems that you see on the screen right now. The truth of the matter is that marketing is not a magic pill, and that broken operations can't handle great marketing. So we find a lot of times the businesses that we work with, their back end really isn't organized. And when we start to send all these leads their way, they just get dropped, nobody's getting called, and the business just ends up wasting money, which is not what we want at all. We want them to have a massive ROI. And that brings me to my next point, which is that online leads require diligent and persistent follow-up. These leads we're generating are not unicorns. They're not just going to walk into your business and ask to buy. You're going to have to do some sales and some convincing. So why don't I dive into how we're actually fixing this problem? The way that we do this is, first of all, we've got to get all the leads in one spot. It's crucial. If they're not in one spot, somebody's going to drop them. Some are going to get forgotten. They're not going to get followed up with properly. So that's the first thing that needs to happen. And we actually have a solution for that, where every single lead you generate, whether through us, someone else, or just organically through what you're already doing, can go into one place. And that's our CRM, which you get included with the service. Now, once we have the existing leads kind of plugged into that CRM, we just need to increase the volume, right? And the way that we do that is by running, as you know, Facebook and Instagram ads, as well as Google ads, if people are interested in that. So we turn on these faucets, if you will, of leads from these different platforms, and they start flowing into your CRM. However, that's not enough. As we know, leads don't equal sales. And so what we also do is make sure that every lead that comes through, we text them immediately. We actually are going to send them emails, and we're going to call your team so that they pick up the phone immediately. It'll say something like press 1 to connect. It connects them to that lead that just called. And then you can have as many discussions as possible, as quickly as possible, with the leads that are coming through. But I'm going to be honest with you, it doesn't stop there. As we know, no-shows can be a big issue with leads generated online. So once we've actually scheduled the appointment with your business, what we're going to do is make sure that these people are getting value as well as reminders leading up to their appointment. So a picture of a case study of something you guys have done in the past, maybe a message from the founder, yourself, your manager, something from the team, kind of adding a personal touch to what's already happening, some reminder texts, some reminder emails as well. And then once I've explained all of those things, I just kind of go quiet and I say, so how does that sound? Any questions right off the bat here? They'll probably have a few questions like, okay, how do you do this specific part? Okay, I've tried this before. What do you think about that? This is where like some initial things start to come up. Just do your best to answer them. Make sure that you're very respectful and make sure that you give good, thoughtful answers. This is where your authority really goes up. If they have questions and you can answer them well, according to their satisfaction, and even add some more tidbits of information that they didn't know, they're much more likely to close. This is where things start to fall down if they start to ask more questions and you can't go out of the memorized script that you already have. That's when trust starts to go down and authority starts to go down. So throughout this process, eventually they will ask how much it costs. You don't have to wait for them to ask, but it is a little bit better if they say, yeah, so how much does this cost? You'd say, great, yeah, great question. Well, let me show you. So it's going to include all of these things, and you'll show them a list of everything that it includes. And then you just state the price calmly and succinctly. You'll say something like, yeah, so it's $2,000 per month plus ad spend, which we discussed earlier would probably be around $2,000 a month as well. So altogether, altogether you're looking at about, and you can either say $4,000 a month, or you could say $1,000 a week in marketing costs. Now, once you say the price, they're likely going to have even more questions, and your job throughout this process is to answer questions succinctly and to push back on incorrect thinking. Sales at the end of the day should be a positive coaching experience. You should really care about this person and care about them getting results. And so if they say something like, well, we just tried Facebook ads in the past and we just don't really think it's going to work for us. If you just sit back and accept that, you're not doing your part to help that person have the best life that they can possibly have. So if you truly believe in what you're selling and you believe that you can help them, you'll push back on that and be like, so why do you think it didn't work last time? Or say something like, I understand, but can I ask you a question? Did you ever have a girlfriend that wasn't your wife? Yeah, of course. Yeah, I dated other people besides my wife. Well, why didn't you stop dating after you broke up with your first girlfriend? Oh, well, that's a good question. It's the same concept here. It's not the platform. Facebook collected $112 billion in advertising revenue last year. Of course, you can make money with Facebook ads. It has to do with the system that you implement with the platform. The platform alone is not enough. Other potential objections you'll get are things like, oh, well, it looks nice, but I really just think it's too expensive or I can't afford it. So there's a few different ways to respond to this one, and it really depends how much authority you have. But here are a few ideas for you. So Amanda, tell me, if this was free, you would do it, right? And see how they respond to that, because they may say, no, I don't think I would do it if it was free. And you would say, okay, why? It seems like maybe there's a problem with the product that you think it's not up to snuff. If they say, yes, I would absolutely do it if it was free, you can say something like, well, why is the price such a barrier then? If you really love the product and you know it will work, then you'll earn your money back. And that should spark an interesting conversation around this whole affordability question. Another one of my favorites is, look, you're going to spend the money either way. You're going to pay for this in time if you try to do it yourself, or you're going to pay for it in money, and we're going to get your results very quickly. So my question is, why try and go do this yourself if we could help you set this up and hand it off to you even, so that you could go run it yourself after that? And that would be a really interesting proposition to a lot of people. If you build out their marketing system and then just let them run it, you can charge even more to build it out and then just coach them along the process, which is a lot easier in many ways. Next up is going to be maybe they're too busy or the time frame isn't right. And in this case, you can be like, look, I totally get it. You need to hire somebody new before you bring them on, but I just want to let you know it's probably going to take us like 2 to 3 weeks to set this up anyway. Do you think you'll have someone new hired by then?
Oh yeah, I probably will.
Well, why don't we start them with a bunch of new leads that they'll be able to practice with by the time they come on board? It's just going to make things move faster in your business in general.
Okay, yeah, that sounds reasonable.
And you move forward from there, or you confront what the real objection is. And then lastly, the holy grail,
I have to run this by my partner. I have to think about it objection.
A lot of times when it's a I just have to think about it type thing, I like to let people think about it as long as I feel like they're being genuine. If they're saying I want to think about it, but you can tell they're just not really that into it, or there's something else going on, I'll push them a little bit harder to see what that is. But if they're really like,
look, I just don't love making like really rash decisions like this,
you'd be like, cool, I don't like making them like that either. I know I can help you. I think you see the value here, and I'd love to get started in the next, 2 or 3 days. What do you think? I've closed some of my best clients this way, and I'm glad they took a couple extra days to close, and that I was very friendly about that because they thought thoroughly about the decision to work with me. I actually prefer that in many cases. Another thing you can do here, depending on what you're trying to do, is just say, look, I'm trying to reach my personal goal for today. What if I get you started for half off on this first month so that you can experience the product, really make sure that it's what you want, and you can cancel it anytime within the first 30 days. So sort of waive some of the contingencies or the tougher parts to swallow about the offer so that you can get them to move forward, but only do that if you're experiencing the resistance. And then if they have to run it by their partner, you could say something like, well, do you think there's anything they wouldn't like about this, what I've shared today? No, I think they'd like it, blah, blah, blah. Or potentially they might say, oh, I think they just don't like this aspect or this aspect. And you can push back on that thinking, kind of help them break the beliefs. Or you could offer to have a call with the partner if it's a deal that's worth it to you to have another call to actually close. Another option is to just do a 3-day no sweat guarantee. So you could be like, look, I'm just trying to, reach my numbers for today. How about we do half off for this first month? And then you can go talk to your partner. If you don't end up wanting to move forward, no sweat, just let us know within 3 days. We'll go ahead and refund you everything. How does that sound? You could also push for a deposit instead of decreasing the price. So if they're like, oh, I need to talk to my partner, you can say, look, we only onboard so many people every week. I'd love for you to get in specifically because I know you do well. I've got some other calls, like I've got other people coming on board. If you want to save your your spot, we do need to collect a $500 deposit. It's fully refundable if it's something you don't want to do. But if you're serious about this and you just need to talk to him, I'd recommend putting that in so we can reserve your spot. Now, don't talk about the scarcity unless you actually have scarcity going on. Now, if you've gone through all these objections and the person just still isn't closing, I would say something like this: Jeremy, look, I'm really confident we can help you. Would you be opposed to moving forward today? See what they say and then move on from there. The most important thing is that you don't let them off with just a verbal commitment. If they've said yes, you can say, look, why don't I send you the invoice right now? You can go ahead and pay that. And then I'll send you the agreement. We can look over it together and just get it signed right now and knock it out. If they don't have time, they have to go, whatever, it's fine. You can send them the invoice and the agreement later. But if you can knock it out on the call, you want to make it as easy, as seamless for them as possible. And that's it, guys. That's how you conduct a sales call. That's how you get people to close. Hopefully this gave you a little bit more of a new perspective on sales with the authority frames and the, hey, I reached out to you or you reached out to me difference. If this helped, please comment below in the description for more information. I'll see you soon.